Welcome back, everybody, to Talk with the Now podcast. I am your host, Gene, and today we're doing another interview with a guest that I've had on before, Mr. Ken Coleman. Ken, how are you today?
Doing well. Good to be with you.
I hear you've had a little bit of snow up there in the Nashville area. Is that right?
Yeah, just enough to remind me why I live in the South. I think it's cool for about 2 days and now I'm over it.
Yeah.
So, ready for spring already. I don't know how the folks in the Midwest and the North do it. I really don't. It's extraordinarily cold and a lot of snow on the ground, but we're here.
Yeah. Well, I do want to talk about what big event that happened in your life toward the end of this, namely Michigan, dealing with the School of Michigan. We'll
Sure.
get to that after we kind of talk a little bit about housekeeping business stuff
Okay. All
first.
right.
But okay, first off, for those of you that don't know, you can go back and watch my old episode with Ken. I had him on a little over a year ago to talk about his book that he had just came out with at the time for Paycheck to Purpose. This time, we're just going to maybe dive a little bit into the woods of a few other things in the weeds, if you will. And um, let me start with this. Ken is from Virginia, correct?
That's right.
Originally, and I know you from last episode you went all the way around, lived all in different places. From Atlanta, you got the bug to become a broadcaster in the broadcasting business. Moved to Nashville eventually, started in that business, and you work for the Ramsey Solutions organization now, and you have your own talk show there. Just for our newest listeners, I guess. Tell us about your talk show and what you do there.
Yeah, so we're coaching people and instructing people to see their potential and reach their potential. And we're doing that specifically in the area of work. Because the bottom line is that if you aren't thriving at work, you are dragging home the results of that to your house. And so I just don't believe you can be fully whole and healthy if you aren't doing work that's meaningful. I really don't. And so you get to determine what meaningful looks like. But that's what we're focusing on and helping people in that area to find meaning in their work. And the result is income and impact. And that's what we're coaching people to do.
Well, I appreciate that. And Kevin, I mean, sorry, Ken, I don't know why I call you Kevin. The books that you've written so far, you've written three books, and I've got to tell y'all, and I don't think that Ken would brag on this too much, but he's got three great books, and I'm just going to show him real quick. He's got this one, One Question, which I have read and loved, by the way. Great quotes and great information and just perspectives from all types of people in this book. How was that? How was that book and writing it, Ken?
It was a lot of fun because
Yeah,
it really was a one question interview. 36 chapters, 36 one question interviews, and that was really fun to plan the question ahead of time, the topic, if you will, craft the question, and then deliver it. And it's a fun little book in that it's life wisdom. Just it's a Snickers. Every chapter is a Snickers bar. It'll satisfy you.
yeah.
And it was a lot of fun to just leave it at that and demonstrate through that book the power of a question to yield life-changing results and information and knowledge and wisdom. So that's what that book was. A lot of fun to do for sure.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie though, some of these people that you interviewed, for instance, Jimmy Carter, it would be hard not to just want to do like an hour-long interview,
Mhm.
getting some of the digging in with some of these people. That's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. The concept came to me as an idea based on years of working with John Maxwell and being at a leadership conference called Catalyst, which was a huge leadership conference in the Atlanta area. It was a national conference, and I was one of the MCs and hosted the Catalyst podcast. And so I would be in these green rooms or in the hallways of this event, and you had all these great leaders gathering for 2 days.
Right.
And when you meet people like that, one of the things I learned was that most people, when you get a chance to meet somebody that's influential or somebody that you look up to or somebody that's wise or whatever, uh, the introductory usually is fan based, meaning you kind of act like a fan. And no matter how gracious they are and kind they are, they treat you like a fan if you act like a fan. And what I mean by that is if I meet somebody to this day that's very well known Well, I'll give you an example. I was in the team hotel at the national championship in Houston, and I was on my way to the restroom, and I see Jack Harbaugh, Jim Harbaugh's brother, head coach of Michigan, his dad. Um, and I see him in the hallway, and nobody's paying attention to him. And right as I'm going to come up to him, and and I immediately begin to formulate a question, because what most people do will go up and say, "Hey, Jack, I'm a big Michigan fan. Love your son. Love you. Whatever." Right? And it's
Hmm.
complimentary based. It's honoring them for sure, but their response is extremely limited to that. Right? What are they going to say? Thank you, appreciate it. And now we've had a transaction.
Hmm. You're Jack Harbaugh. Yes, I am.
Yeah, he knows. And so what I learned to do is to, and I did it with him. So I walked up to him and I stuck my hand out. I said, "Jack," and he said, "Hey," and I said, "My name's Ken," and I said, "Hey, I gotta ask you, were you intentional to talk about leadership around the house? To talk about coaching? Did you push the boys into coaching? What was that like?" And it opened him up. And so before you know it, he's talking to me for 5 to 7 minutes, and people are lined up behind me waiting to meet him.
Oh, that's great.
And he's just talking. And so the difference there is that I went and I asked a question. And now instead of a transaction, I have an interaction.
Mm.
And so
Yeah, I
we need to
like
be
that.
using that all the time. Don't waste an interaction with somebody and turn it into a transaction. Lead with a question. You get a chance to meet a famous person, ask a question. And at that point, they've got to decide whether or not they're going to respond, but almost always they will. And I will tell you, the better the question, the better the response.
Yeah, that makes sense. The what few times I've met people, I can kind of relate it to when you're going into an interview, maybe even like because that person is famous in your mind because they're going to decide your future potentially. So when you're talking to a manager, hiring manager, it can be very intimidating to just sit
Mhm.
there and just sort of be freeze, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, Other books you've done, The Proximity Principle, read this one. Great book on I don't know if networking would be a great way to say that that's the very basic
Mhm.
summation of it. Would you, or would it? I know it goes a lot further than
Sure. I think traditionally, yeah, I think most people would use the word networking. I like to use the word connecting.
ah.
But the book is actually really about opportunity. It is a manual on how to turn opportunities into your future. And the key is the more opportunities we get, the better options we have for the future that we want, right?
Right.
So it all comes down to opportunities, open doors, if we want to use another phrase. And so the book is essentially about the 5 people and the 5 places that you need to put yourself in and around. So I need to put myself in these places and around these people. And so, yeah, it is a book about creating opportunities, or in other words, it's a book about finding open doors. That's what it's
Hmm.
really about. And so the proximity principle simply says, in order to do what I want to do, I got to be around people who are doing it and in places where it is happening. And it just simplifies everything as it relates to getting in. If I
Right.
want to, go into this field over here, all right, first thing I know to do is meet some people in that field. That's just
Right.
the first thing we're going to do. So it really simplifies what it can be an intimidating journey for people and frustrating.
Yeah. I was just thinking, listening to your show a lot over the years that you've had it. By the way, how many years have you done it now? The Ken Coleman show in its current iteration.
6 years
6 years.
coming into 7, actually.
Wow. Wow, that's crazy to think. I've been married for 8 years back in 2015. And to think that I just started listening to you back in 17 or 18 and that. Well, before that, I listened to the other podcast you did. Oh gosh, what is it called? I'm sorry. I'm using the
Entree leadership.
yeah, Entree Leadership. Thank you. Yes,
Mhm.
that was an excellent one. I highly recommend people go back and listen to the archives of those. So many good interviews of that one. The current show that you had, I've heard so many callers say that, and you've coached them toward doing that very thing that you just mentioned. For instance, I've heard several people on that show say, for instance, they wanted to be a car guy. Like for instance, they say that they work on their car in their garage all the time. They want to get into being a mechanic or a auto collision guy. And I can't tell you how many times I remember you saying things like, well, you've got to get out there and get into it any way you can. And
Yeah, I
that's,
mean,
yeah.
yeah, that's the idea. Um, you have to get education and experience, right? Learning and doing. And I think that's what's wrong with our college education system right now is it's so focused on the learning and very little of the doing. As a result, people are getting out of college with very little true real world qualification. And I think if you look at the trades, it's the exact opposite. You go to a trade school, you're going to spend a couple days in the classroom or a couple days learning, whatever that learning environment looks like, and then you're gonna spend the other days out on the job, learning and doing, learning and doing. When there's all kinds of learning and very little doing,
Right.
then what we have is somebody who is,
Hmm.
not really ready. And the more I can learn and do, the more ready I am and the quicker that I grow.
Well, to piggyback on that, your last book that you've done is From Paycheck to Purpose. Um, and in a lot of ways, that sort of piggybacks on the proximity principle, does it not?
Certainly. I mean, I think
Yeah.
that there's 2 chapters in the 3rd stage. There's 7 stages in the book, and we dedicate, 2 chapters to each stage, and, the 3rd stage is get connected. So the 7 stages are in order: get clear, get qualified, get connected, get started, get promoted, get the dream job, and the final stage, give yourself away. And so no question that I pull a lot from the proximity principle as I write 2 chapters about the art, and it really is an art form of getting connected.
Mhm.
And so we absolutely leverage some of that. It's a very different book in that the proximity principle is locked in on uh, the specific deep dive strategies of getting connected, whereas paycheck to purpose is a broader, larger path, if you will, a clear path. But yeah, they certainly draw off of each other.
I think that as my kids grow up, they're not teenage years yet, but when they do, I'll definitely be putting this in their must read list because I think that we've all been there at the sophomore years, your junior
Hmm.
years in high school, going back to the high school days where you're just like, I don't know what I want to do. I don't know. I mean, I work at, fast food restaurant on the weekends or whatever. Who knows what I want to do when I get out of high school? Um, and I think that these can give you a lot clearer idea of which direction to go.
Hmm.
Um, so I guess a follow-up question with that might be for now that we're in that age range, looking at that age range,
Uh-huh.
how might you, I guess, counsel parents? Like if you met some parents that say, Ken, what do I do with my son? He doesn't really have a lot of direction. He's, a senior in high school and he's thinking about just going to the community college and he's go from there. Like how much you counsel them on what to tell him or her?
Yeah, I think that anytime you've got a parent that's talking about it that way, they need to change the lens by which they're looking at their kid. And the lens that they're probably looking at their kid is through fear. And that fear is that I didn't do a good job raising my kid. My kid doesn't have direction. My kid's not going to choose a good direction. They're not going to amount to anything. And I worry about my fear is for them and their livelihood and their future. And I also, quite frankly, have some fear of being judged. So let's start there.
Yeah.
And so we gotta take those glasses of fear off, if you will, and we put on the glasses of the guide. And no fear, just, okay, we're gonna come in with some wisdom and some knowledge and, or maybe a coach. And, let's set a guide. Let's put on some glasses of the coach, and we take our parent glasses off, put the coach glasses on, and what does a coach do? So a coach, whether it be a health coach, a nutrition coach, a career coach, a financial coach, an athletic coach, all of those coaches, the first thing they do is they assess the player, right? They assess the person. And as parents, we know our kids better than anybody, but we kind of get clouded in our own fear and we start projecting maybe some of our own life stuff on them. And what we've got to do is we got to take a step back and remove all of the emotions of a parent and we have to take on the emotions of a coach. And the emotions of a coach are one thing. I got to help that kid or help that player, help that person be their best so that they can win. And when they win, we win, right? That's what a coach does. So I would then be looking at that scenario and I would be assessing. And I'd start off, with my spouse and I would go, what has this kid always been interested in? Well, what are the things in life, extracurricular or an academic subject that has lit that kid up a little bit? There's a lot more interest there. And so then let's look at the talent side of things. What are their greatest skills?
Right.
Where's their great potential? And you begin to just make a list of those things. And now all of a sudden you got something to work with. But instead of just putting that on the kid, now it's to sit down with the kid and go, hey, what are you dreaming about? First of all, this is a pressure filled time of your life, culture, even us as parents, sometimes we put a lot of pressure on you to make a really big decision. And I don't want you to feel that you got to make a big decision. I want you to start thinking about direction.
Yeah.
And let's take the pressure of decisions off of these kids and let's start talking to them about directions. Directions versus decisions. And let them dream a little bit with you and tell them, what do you wonder about? What do you think about? Like, okay, hey, so I'll tell you what, I know somebody. You think you want to be an accountant? I know somebody over here. Let me set up lunch or coffee with them. I'll pay for the coffee. You go and just do a little book report, just an old school book report in the form of a 30-minute time of questions. Ask them the ins and outs of their day, the good, the bad, the ugly. That's what I would be doing as a parent is trying to take the pressure off the kid, help illuminate them to who they really are, what you've seen in their life, and then encourage them with a risk-free exploration in this time to kind of kick the tires on some ideas. I think if you do that, you're going to get the best results.
Yeah. And I think that kind of goes hand in hand with what you've counseled people from what I've heard when they're my age or 30 years old or whatever. And they're sort of like, all right, Ken, I've been an engineer for the last 40 years and I want to just make this huge jump and just become like a fifth grade social science or social studies teacher. You know, that's a lot of what you just said there is what they've got to do. They've got to get clear on what they want to do, and then they've got to figure out, well, what does it take to become that, social studies teacher, fifth grade social studies teacher, or whatever, high school social studies teacher.
Mhm.
And then they've got to figure out the steps to get there. And then I guess ask a lot of questions of themselves, nah?
Yeah, no
Yeah.
question. I mean, the journey in Paycheck to Purpose, the book we've been talking about, is a journey to self-awareness.
Mhm.
And we teach these kids about the sun, the stars, the periodic table, algebra. We teach them about all kinds of stuff. What we don't do a good job of teaching our kids in the school system, and certainly even in our own homes, is teaching them about themselves, teaching them how to see themselves as they really are. Self-awareness to me is a superpower.
Yeah. Well, another thing you talk about on the show that kind of relates to that, I think, is being the best at where you are. Because a lot of people that you discuss with on the show are sort of like, well, I want to become, I'm sort of stuck in this graphic design job or whatever job. And they're kind of like, but I really want to be an actor or I really want to be a graphic designer or an engineer. And a lot of times I hear you tell them, well, be the best of where you are now. Um, so how, if you could walk a little bit through that, how does somebody become the best at what they do where they are right now so that they can, how does that help them become where they want to be in the future? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think there's a three-part process to winning the now so that you can get to the next. And it's pretty simple. First is knowing your role. That's clarity. The second is accepting your role. That's attitude. And the third is maximizing your role. That's effort. So we'll break the three down. Knowing your role, clarity. Well, that's on you and your leader, but it's just as much on you as it is your leader because many times leaders don't do a great job of giving very clear expectations to somebody in their role. So when they don't do that and you're not clear, it's your job to go, hey, can we define my role? I would like clear expectations. I want to know what I'm supposed to do, how I'm supposed to do it, and when I'm supposed to do it. Right. And so let's get very clear at Ramsey Solutions. We call that a KRA, key responsibility area or key results area. So you call that whatever you want to, but it's a one-page description and it doesn't have to be that formal, but it does need to be clear. And one of the great frustrations that people have is when they don't know where they stand. We humans are creatures of progress. We want to know where we stand. Even those people say, I'm not very competitive. I say, bull crap. You may not be competitive in a sport. You may not like to compete, but you're paying attention to the scoreboard. And so you need to get clear on your role. What is my role in this organization? So that way I know, am I filling it? Am I doing it well? So knowing your role, what's expected of me now? That's clarity. Now, the next thing is your attitude, right? You have got to be grateful for the now. It's really, really hard for us humans because we're, again, creatures of progress. So we want a job, we get all excited about it, we get it, and within 6 weeks we've already adapted. And what are we doing? Looking to the next, right? So know your role, right? Is really huge, very, very important. But you've got to really appreciate where you're at. That's that attitude piece, right? And so appreciating the role, and understanding that I don't have a next if I don't win the now is really huge. That's a gratitude issue. It's an attitude of gratitude, right? Know your role, accept your role, and then third, maximize your role. Maximizing your role is, okay, I'm very clear on what the role is. I'm grateful for it. And because I'm grateful for it, and I know that if I win now and I accept this role, that I've got an opportunity for the next, now I'm going to be looking for opportunities to help a teammate when I can, to help my leader on something that's not maybe in my job description, but I'm doing really well and I'm crushing it. But my eye is always roving, looking for an opportunity to come in earlier, stay later, help somebody else out, take it for the team, if you will. That's the idea of maximizing your role. And so I'll just sum all three of those actions up into one simple analogy. You take a young guy and he makes a Division I college football team. He was a stud in high school. Now he's stepped up. He's really grateful to get a scholarship. He's grateful for the opportunity to play college football, has an eye on the pros. What does he do? Well, he comes in and he was a stud on his high school team, but now he's on a really good football team. And so now he's playing special teams. He's not playing on offense. He was an offensive stud or he was a defensive stud, but now he's playing special teams. So he's got to take that and go, I know my role. Right now, my role is kickoffs and punts, and that's my role. And I've got to specifically, I am blocking on this, and I am a runner down the field on this, whatever it is. I know my role. And so he's got to accept that and go, look, I'm on the team. I'm grateful that I got a scholarship. I'm grateful to play D1 football. I'm grateful to have a chance. I'm actually grateful to be on the field. I could be on the bench, but I'm actually on special teams. And now I'm going to go hard in practice on the special teams unit, and I'm going everything out. But I'll tell you what I am doing. I'm coming in just as early as the quarterback. I'm getting extra weight room reps. I'm going to actually show up, and I was a receiver in high school, and now I'm on special teams. But you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go to the quarterback. I'm going to go, hey, you ever want somebody to throw to? I'll stay after practice. I'll come to practice early. I'll meet you at the park on weekends, whatever. That's the idea. That's all three of those combined in that one metaphor. And that, by the way, is how you win the now. And when you win the now, you won't ever have to worry about the next. Those opportunities will present themselves.
I think when you're talking about win the now, it's kind of like reaching that fourth gear, if you will. Back in the old days when you had four on the floor, you got that fourth gear and you're really pushing hard, But I think a lot of people get stuck in that first gear, that first and second gear, and they're just sort of demotivated, and they're just because we're so, I don't know what the word is, consumer driven and just wanting to have as much as we can, as fast as we can, that we sort of got to have it now. But I think what I hear you saying is you've got to push it. You've got to push yourself and challenge yourself and make yourself be grateful and have a much better attitude toward where you are now so that you can achieve more later. Because if you are terrible at your job now and you're just sort of, unmotivated and don't really care, what are you going to be like when you do have that great job you've always wanted? Because those habits are going to transition easily.
That's exactly right.
Um, we've got a few minutes left. I wanted to ask you a few things about this. Mentors. I think that's a huge way to get into being the best at who you are now, a lot of ways. And I've followed Brian Buffini a little bit in the past. I think he's a great guy to look for.
Mhm. Mhm.
He talks about virtual mentors a lot, and I think that's a great starting point for somebody that doesn't have any. When they look around, they're like, "I have nobody to use." Um, would you agree that guys like him and the Jim Rohn and Zig Ziglars of the world going back and finding their archived footage is a great way to get that attitude adjustment, if you will?
Yeah, I think watching, listening, and reading are 3 of the best ways to, build yourself up,
Yeah.
and, let others pour into you. We live in the day and age now where, again, there are no shortage of options in those 3 areas. And if you aren't reading, if you aren't listening, if you aren't watching stuff that develops you, then, yeah, you're falling behind just by osmosis.
So the self-development piece is an important piece I think that we could overlook then.
Yeah, I think most people do.
Mm.
I think we go through this. Our life cycle is, 0 to 5 is discovery and wonder, and then from 5 to 18 or 5 to 22, or gee whiz, you put in master's degrees and graduate degrees, so let's call it 5 to 25, you know? You go into, um, memorization and regurgitation mode, right? So it's a lot of consumption, um, and then you come out and it's like, "Okay, I'm done with school, I'm done learning, now I'm gonna go to work." And I think that's an easy rhythm to fall into. So I go from wondering to learning to working. And I think that, just philosophically, yeah, that you should never stop learning. But let's be honest, the Western education system makes learning suck, right? Because it's all about, as I said earlier, memorization and regurgitation. Memorize it, spit it back out on the test and the quiz, and it's not learning for the sake of learning. And so that initial 0 to 5 stage of wondering, where we're just these little creatures of wonder.
Yeah.
Everything's so exciting, and why this and why that, like that's childlike wonder. That's what we call that. Well, we
I
call
think
it
yeah.
childlike wonder, which
Hmm.
implies it ain't adult like wonder. And I think that, I'm answering this, very philosophically, but I think that that's the real issue, is that personal development, we stop developing because we stop learning, right? We know stuff about politics and we know stuff about the Kardashians and we know stuff about social media. But like, when was the last time you sat down and read about somebody or read about something that you when you learned about it, it was going to make you better, right? A parenting book, a marriage book, a philosophy book, for crying out loud, a
Hmm.
business book. That's what I'm talking about.
Well, I think one of Jim Rohn's quotes that I just have memorized and always comes to mind, mainly because I'm still working on it in my own head. Because my head is, I think, geared toward exactly what you talked about. The the things that the common person is just the way they look at life. And so I've
Mhm.
been watching and reading a lot from Jim Rohn and guys like Zig Ziglar. And he said that work harder on yourself than you do your job.
Yeah.
And the first time I heard that, I was like, wait a minute. That sounds like a foreign language to me. What is he talking about?
Just the idea of personal growth.
Yeah.
If you are learning and doing, then you will be growing. And so the idea is what he's essentially saying is he's making a really strong point there to go, and I'm gonna go inside of Jim's mind here, because I think what he's saying is a strong challenge to say, if you're working a 40-hour a week job, then you ought to be putting more hours into yourself than you do your job. That's what I hear him saying. It's a strong challenge.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Excuse me. But I think that's the idea. It's that while I'm at work, I need not just be focused on doing my job. I certainly do, but I also need to go, how do I get better at that? Right.
Mhm.
So every interview I do, every show I do, every talk I give, I'm not just doing the work. I'm trying to get better at the work. So it means I'm getting better as a communicator, which means the talk should be better and the show and books and etc.
Right. Yeah. No, that's excellent. Well, I've got about 2 to 3 minutes here left.
All
We can
right,
put
let's
all that
talk
away.
Michigan football.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you,
I'm going to
I
hold
mean,
you to that because I don't get to talk about it very often. So you
dude,
brought it up.
yeah, absolutely. As a
All
Georgia
right.
fan, I was quite
Oh,
excited when the dogs won a few times. I got to
sure.
say, what's your feeling now? How you feeling?
I feel like a champion.
Yeah.
I mean, it really is different. It really is because in my lifetime, we have not won a national championship. I don't count 1997 because I'm a winner and I believe in competition and I don't believe in co-national championships. That's the biggest bunch of crap that I've ever heard of. So I never felt great going to bed that night, 1997. Uh, I felt great going to bed uh, a couple weeks ago. And so it really is different. I was thinking about it last night. I mean, I've never experienced this. Bama fans, Clemson fans, Georgia fans, they've experienced it a lot. It's pretty special when you think
Mhm.
back on the season, right? And you go, we finished with a perfect record and we won.
Yeah.
And we overcame the slander, the doubters, all the accusations, and we played on the field. And those guys on the field, they were the best football team in America. And it feels pretty freaking great, to be honest with you.
It's quite gratifying, I got to say
Yeah.
that yeah. When Georgia
You can't
first
take it
won,
away. Can't take it
no,
away from us
when
forever. We
Georgia
are
won that
national
first one,
champions. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
No, it feels really good, because like every offseason, there's always a reflection like, oh, I wish this would have happened. We could have, there's nothing to wish for.
Yep.
Right. I wish Harbaugh would come back. I don't think it's going to happen, but,
That's going to
you
be
know
my
what?
follow-up. Yeah. If Harbaugh you think is probably going to go NFL or not, I don't know.
Here's what I think. Um, if he comes back, it's because he didn't get an offer that he wanted. I think, listen, I don't think he's posturing for more money. I don't think all of this is posturing for the latest rumor, and it's rumor
Right.
that he wants a clause in his contract that says he can't get fired if the NCAA comes down on him. I don't think it's about that. I
Yeah.
think at this stage of his life, and it has been for a few years, that Michigan is his next best option.
Hmm.
I think he loves Michigan. Um, but I know this about the psychology of a human, and Jim Harbaugh is not immune from this. And I love Harbaugh, all right? And I'm a diehard Michigan fan. If he wanted to come back to Michigan, the deal had already been signed.
Hmm.
There's if he was like, I am not interested in the NFL, I want to give it some more time here, or I want to retire as a legend like Nick Saban just did. Um, like, by the way, I don't see Kirby Smart ever leaving Georgia.
Yeah, I agree.
Because for whatever reason, Kirby Smart could give a crap about the NFL, but Jim's tasted it. He was at the Super Bowl, lost to his brother. I think Jim is a restless soul in some ways. I don't think Dabo will ever leave Clemson. So bottom line is, if he wanted to be at Michigan for a long time, he would have already signed the deal.
Yeah.
Now, he may still come back. I doubt it.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, Ken, I appreciate it so much for coming on.
You bet.
And especially given the circumstances of your cold weather in Nashville. And
Yeah, I
uh,
appreciate you having me back.
dude, we'll keep up and everybody tune in to Ken Coleman show. I'll leave links in our you know, comments section for everybody to find the show and all your other resources. Thanks, Ken. Have a great day, man.
Yeah, man. Thank you.
Take care. Bye.
Bye bye.